Hi guys, Matt the Editor here, and welcome to another edition of My Who Reviews. Now, once again, I have to give you another heads up for this one because I've just got back from doing a production of Avenue Q in Port Call, and which means I've got enough time to do whatever I want, whether it's university work or whether it's doing these reviews or doing some more filming of my action figure adventures. Nature decides to fight back and give me a terrible, terrible cold. And this cold has been going on for God knows for how long. And I've had essence of it whilst I was in production with Avenue Q. But it was only until after we've done the show it starts to kick in. And because of this, it's really ruining my chances of doing anything at all. I have a terrible feeling that by the time that this cold is, I wouldn't have enough time to get this review out before the next episode of Doctor Who turns up. So apologies if I don't sound like I usually do. So anyway, this week it's Demons of the Punjab, written by Vinay Patel. We've reached the halfway point, and so far, Series 11 has been a mixed bag for me. The Woman Who Fell to Earth was a solid opening, Ghost Monument was boring, Rosa was good, Arachnids in the UK was stupid but fun, and the Saranga Conundrum was all over the place dumb. But I have to say, this episode is what I was at least intrigued of watching. I'd like to know more about what the episode was going to be about, particularly with Yasmin going to see her grandmother as a young woman, even though it's not originally done in Doctor Who, and I wanted to see what they could do, even though I had a few theories on whether it was going to be compared to Rosa Parks or other existing episodes like Father's Day, but once the episode started, I'm not gonna lie, I really, really liked this one. Now, let's talk about the one thing I think really works about this episode, and that is the story. Usually, I have said the episodes needed to be longer or need at least another rewrite. This episode is well paced, and the story is perfectly structured. I think Vinay Patel has done a good job in telling a story and using its historical facts or culture to be part of the plot, rather than use too much sci-fi stuff or spaceships or aliens. He's managed to tell a sad but true story about how lives were torn apart and homes ruined, and how we need to embrace differences and diversity, as well as embracing the changes. And after the episode, he mentioned in his tweets that there are so many stories to be told about partition. This is only one, and whilst it was an honor to tell it, I'd urge you to seek out more. He also said, a part of me was like, oh my god, I get to write a monster for Doctor Who, but it's about balancing that with how these elements work within the seriousness of the topic. If you cannot tell by these tweets, you can tell by watching this episode that this is a story Vinay Patel really wanted to tell. Honestly, I think he's picked a very, very interesting setting. 17th of August 1947. That's the time of the partition. Now, I have never heard of this particular event, but I have heard of these types of occasions. In fact, I would consider kids and students, and perhaps some other viewers, to go and do some research about the partition and probably how the Indian Army was actually part of the British Empire during the war after watching this episode. I also find it kind of ironic about this episode being released on Remembrance Day, and there's elements of remembrance sprinkled across the episode. And I guess some people could compare the surrounding or the historical time to nowadays. For example, the borders or the splitting of families, friends, lands, or cultures being torn apart or split apart, which I guess you could compare this to Brexit. I don't want to get into full detail about that, but I think it's right to mention it because this episode seems to come out exactly the right time. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I appreciate that they did it, and the story itself is very, very good. Yeah, I agree, it is quite cliche, and there are some cliche emotional moments, but the reason I didn't care about it was because I was so fascinated into the characters. Yasmin is definitely getting some more development in this episode than she did in the previous episodes. In Arachnids in the UK, we were introduced to her family, which was good, but we didn't get quite a lot of that. This week, we get to know how much she loves her nan. She does have enough time to let us actually get to know her Nan, which I liked. And I loved how we get to see Yasmin discover that everything she thought about her family, everything she thought about her Nan was a lie, but not for the bad reasons. And I gotta say, I really do love Yaz's Nan, Umbream. I loved her warm, charming relationship with Yasmin in present day, and I loved her free-spirited charm in the past times. I think she said earlier in the episode she was the first woman married in Pakistan, working a mill in Yorkshire, or when she gave out her letters and said, "Don't read the filthy bits." I like that. And when she gave out her watch and said this must never be fixed, which we do get to find out why in the episode, and honestly, I think it's kind of sweet. And when we see her as a young woman, we learn even more about her. And we learned she was the first woman to marry an Indian, or was it a Muslim? Sorry, I can't remember. But she was the first woman to marry someone in Pakistan. And we learned why she cared about her family, why she loved her fiancé, and I liked seeing what she believed in. And even though she said at the end she didn't get what she was looking for, she is still happy to be given a home, a family, even though Sheffield isn't as glamorous as she thought. And the family around her is also very good too. These characters could have been the same stereotypical cliche characters we get in most episodes about families organizing weddings, but I actually liked these characters. I liked the mother who was always concerned about her daughter, but she does care about her daughter's choices. We got Manesh, the brother, who is uncertain about the marriage. I guess some people say that he is a villain, but he has a legit reason. He's a character who's just doing what he believes in, even though he doesn't want to do it, even if it means walking out of the wedding, holding a gun at the doctor, which was a really intense scene, by the way, or calling the soldiers to come and attack. He's a character who's more into the politics rather than the independence in India. And let's talk about Bream, whom when we first find out he is the one getting married, at first I thought we were going to get those stupid love triangle stories, which I am not a fan of, but the more the episode continued, I really started to like this character, and by the time Fabreem started talking about how much she really loved him, I started to realize what was going to happen, and I literally felt sorry for them. In the beginning, I was starting to question in the first half, why were we focusing on this character instead of the Nan? But the more I thought about it, I started to understand why we focused more on him than we did of the Nan, and the episode really does explain it well. I even liked how, even though he is worried about how much change has come upon his family, like for example the war scene in Singapore, which is shot brilliantly well, or whether he's seen the demons standing over his brother's dead body, starts to not recognize his own brother who listens to the radio. He is still willing to have his wedding with the help of the Doctor, Graham, and Ryan. And speaking of the TARDIS team, I really did like Jodie in this episode. This is the Doctor I wanted to see from the very start. Someone who is quirky, but knows when to take responsibility and support to those who surround her. And her heroism is established extremely well in this episode. Like when Yaz asks to go and see her Nan, the Doctor just replies with, "Well, we could, but we shouldn't." And even when they do go, she's still making sure not to interfere. And even though when she does interfere, she has a good reason. She mentions because the demons started it, she has to interfere to get things right. Jodie Whittaker has some good moments, which I'm not sure whether it was good or bad in my opinion. For example, we get that little scene where she mentions, when she talks about being a man, and Yasmin has to try and talk their way out of it. That was actually kind of funny. Or where she literally takes the dust container in the demon spaceship, and she realizes that she made a major mistake straight after it as it raised the alarm. And I liked seeing her using proper science with potions, containers, liquids, and flasks. I would have wished we got to see more of it, at least see her working more and more into it, but it was nice to see something like that in this episode. There's even an obvious Matt Smith moment where she says, "Okay, I need this, I need that, I need some chicken poo and a biscuit." Why? Because I like biscuits. Yeah, it's silly, but hey, come on, it's the Doctor. Of course, we get the wedding scene, but I never thought about this before, but I really like the idea of the Doctor being a vicar or a deacon or a priest at a wedding. And I especially liked how she's being honest about knowing how to wed people in their culture, but she uses her own faith in her speech, lets the others continue the wedding in their own way, like tying their hands together or talking about how love can be the strongest weapon in the entire universe. But what I did like is that it turns out that the Doctor was wrong about them. But honestly, I liked the idea of the Doctor just pretty much discovered that she was wrong about what she thought. Yes, she knew the demons are assassins, but when she gets kidnapped by the demons and discovered that they are actually witnesses, she's literally beaten inside. And throughout the rest of the episode, she's literally damaged by what she had to do next. And that was to let Bream die. And she knows she cannot do anything to help. And her reaction to the sound of the gunshot explains it all. There's no dialogue, there's no explanation, it's just a simple reaction. And of course, the TARDIS team do have some good moments too. I've already explained Yasmin's character in this episode, and I'm slightly starting to dislike Ryan a little bit more, but to be fair, he does have some good funny moments in this episode. I like it when he's tagging along with the Doctor and Bream in the forests while Graham and Yasmin are doing their own thing. And in every moment we get, he keeps asking whether something is good or bad. I literally laughed at one of them. And Graham kind of goes without saying, whether he's talking to Yasmin to comfort her about how her nan may or may not have been lying to her or her life, and especially to Bream, saying that yes, hatred can be found from all sides, but what really matters is to try and be a good man. Especially since he knows that he had to hold his nerve and let this man die. My God, Bradley Walsh can act. So yeah, as you can tell, I really praise a lot in this episode. Is there any problems with this episode? Yeah, there are a few tiny problems, a few tiny nitpicks here and there, which I don't mind, but they are still problems. I think if Rosa Parks didn't come out first, this episode would have had a better chance. And again, like Rosa, I like the story, I like the characters, however the threat is a little underused or misused. Yes, the aliens look so cool. It kind of reminds me if Bartok from Anastasia stole Sutek the Destroyer's robes. And the voices itself sound cool, and I even like the design of the ship. It's simple but effective, particularly how they filmed the scenes of them looking at the computers with the projections hovering over their faces. And I liked why they were here, to bear witness to honor life as it passes. They honor those who die alone, as Graham puts it, aliens with compassion. But since you already have conflict with the partition, why would you need these aliens? But again, I still was fascinated with the conflict in the episode that I didn't really care. The rest of the problems are just little nitpicks, like the Holy Man, which is pretty much a pointless character, which leads to the whole point of the purple dust, which honestly served no point to the whole plot. We also get the screwdriver being completely useless for a second time in a row. Some of the dialogue can be a little bit miswritten. For example, my father just pointed out that they wouldn't be able to say, "Okay, get in." And there's even a moment where Bream says, "I have demons of my own to face." I felt that line alone was a little too obvious. There are some similarities to existing episodes like Rosa or Father's Day. They even have the sad song in the credits. At least it was an original instrumental score rather than an out-of-place pop song. And some of the stuff I thought would be so cliche is done in a good way because of the production design. Big props to the people who worked on the locations. The place looks beautiful, bright, colorful, wide landscapes. And the music itself is pretty good too. The use of percussion mixed in with the cinematography of the location. They even did a little twist on the cliche of having a female African singer. But instead of doing that, they have a male singer doing it. That was interesting. I didn't know this until they mentioned it on Twitter, that the singer is actually singing the Doctor Who theme tune. Usually I don't like it when a voice choir sings the theme tune, but for some reason, this one sounded kind of cool. And instead of the usual beam me up Scotty teleportation, the demons evaporate in the style of Harry Potter. So, yeah, after all of that, here is my conclusion. Yes, Demons of the Punjab is another solid entry to the Doctor Who universe. However, I will admit that this episode is probably going to be overshadowed by Rosa, but it still stands as a solid story. The wedding scene was beautiful, the acting was very good, the episode was filmed great, and the music was spectacular. It's another brilliant episode. The problems of there not being much of a threat, and some of the scenes do drag for, because I was fully fascinated with the story and its characters, I would be able to overlook those flaws. It's a beautiful story with stunning visuals and great acting. And to those people who do not like this episode or this series because of controversial or racial reasons, do us a favor. If you're not going to say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So yeah, after all of that, I'm giving this episode 9 out of 10. Be sure to leave a comment, like and share this video, and if you have seen the episode, what did you think about it? And if you'd like to see more of my videos, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.